family of Simone Jasmin, better known as the Queen of the South, has rubbished claims that she was involved in murder or attempted murder. Jasmin's believed to have led a ruthless drug gang in Wentworth, Durban, which supplied heroin to townships around the city. She was later arrested today after being shot dead last Thursday by a group of men. ENCA's Litiwe Mdluli reports.
It's the evening of October 29th, 2020. An Uber sedan pulls up outside a house on the Bluff, a quiet suburb south of Durban. Simone Jasmin, known to many as Moni, steps out, dressed in casual clothes, her long hair tied back. She opens the back door and starts to get in. The moment she sits down, gunfire erupts. The shots ring out in the dark. Neighbors hear the gunfire and rush to their windows. The Uber driver, frozen in shock, watches as Jasmin's lifeless body slumps over, blood pooling on the seat. The killers vanish into the night. Just like that, the reign of Durban's Queen of the South comes to a brutal end. Simone Jasmin was one of the most powerful and feared women in Durban's underworld. She ran a drug empire that stretched across the city, operating in areas like Umlazi, Lamontville, and KwaMashu. Her gang, known as the cartel, controlled the drug trade with ruthless efficiency. Some called her a queen, others called her a killer. But one thing was certain: she was a woman who rose to power in a world dominated by men. And in the end, that power came at a price. But who was Simone Jasmin? How did she rise from the streets of Wentworth to become one of the most notorious crime bosses in South Africa? And who wanted her dead? This is the story of the rise and fall of Durban's Queen of the South. Kindly click the like button and subscribe to this channel. Before she became the Queen of the South, Simone Jasmin was just another girl growing up in Wentworth, a tough neighborhood in Durban known for gang violence, drugs, and poverty. Life here wasn't easy. Unemployment was high, and opportunities were few. For many young people, crime wasn't just a choice. It was survival. Simone was born and raised in this environment. Wentworth was her home, but it was also a battlefield. Gangs ruled the streets, and drug money flowed through the community like a hidden currency. If you weren't part of the system, you were either a victim or struggling to get by. Little is known about Simone's childhood, but one thing is clear: she wasn't the type to back down. She was smart, street-savvy, and fearless. And as she got older, she became involved with a man who changed the course of her life forever. Simone fell in love with a gang member, a man deeply involved in the drug trade. Some say he was her introduction to the underworld. Others believe she always had it in her. Either way, his influence would be the first step in her rise to power. But love in the underworld is dangerous. And when her boyfriend was killed, Simone was left with two choices: walk away or take over where he left off. She chose power. This was the moment Simone Jasmin stopped being just another woman from Wentworth. This was the moment she started becoming the Queen of the South. The death of Simone Jasmin's boyfriend was a turning point. Most women in her position would have disappeared into the background, mourning quietly, moving on with life. But Simone was different. She didn't just survive, she adapted, learned, and took control. After her boyfriend's death, there was a power vacuum. His drug operation was left vulnerable, and rival gangs saw an opportunity to take over. But Simone wasn't about to let that happen. At first, Simone played it smart. She didn't challenge the big names outright. Instead, she used her connections to rebuild the supply chain her boyfriend once controlled. She brought in trusted people, cut deals with local dealers, and made sure the money kept flowing. But Simone wasn't just looking to survive. She wanted to dominate. And to do that, she had to send a message. As her influence grew, so did her operation. She formed her own gang, a group of fiercely loyal enforcers. They called themselves the cartel. Their mission was simple: take over the Durban drug trade and crush anyone who stood in their way. The cartel expanded rapidly, moving beyond Wentworth into Umlazi, Lamontville, and KwaMashu. With every deal, Simone was making a name for herself. She wasn't just another dealer, she was a queenpin. But with power comes enemies. Rival gangs weren't happy about her rise. Some tried to take her out. Others tried to cut into her profits. And then there was law enforcement. The police were starting to take notice, and Simone was moving higher up on their radar. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. She had built an empire, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it from her. The Queen of the South was just getting started. But with enemies closing in, how long could she keep the crown? Simone Jasmin was no longer just another player in the drug game. She was running it. What started as a small operation quickly grew into one of the most dominant drug syndicates in Durban. The cartel, her organization, controlled large parts of the city's drug trade, supplying areas like Umlazi, Lamontville, and Kwamashu. Her business strategy was simple: loyalty, efficiency, and violence when necessary. She ensured her people were well paid, which kept them from turning against her. She also established direct connections with suppliers, cutting out middlemen and increasing profits. Those who refused to cooperate either disappeared or were dealt with brutally. Fear and respect kept her empire intact. But Simone wasn't just a crime boss. She understood the importance of image. Unlike many gang leaders who flaunted their wealth recklessly, she invested her money wisely. She bought properties, started legitimate businesses, and even had a fleet of Uber taxis under her name. To the outside world, she was a successful entrepreneur. But behind the scenes, drug money fueled everything. In Wentworth, she became a polarizing figure. Some saw her as a menace, the source of the community's drug problem. But to others, she was a savior. She helped struggling families pay their bills, provided food parcels, and even funded community events. For many, especially those who had nothing, Simone was the only person willing to help. Her growing influence made her untouchable, at least for a while. Corrupt officials turned a blind eye, and some even worked with her in exchange for payoffs. But as the cartel expanded, so did the violence. Rival gangs didn't take kindly to her dominance, and turf wars erupted across the city. Drive-by shootings became common, and bodies started piling up. Despite the bloodshed, Simone remained in control. Her name commanded fear in the streets. But the bigger her empire grew, the more attention she attracted. The police were watching, and so were her enemies. The cracks in her empire were starting to show, and soon, the Queen of the South would learn that no one stays on top forever. Simone Jasmin had built an empire that seemed untouchable, but power always comes with a price. As the cartel expanded, so did the violence. Shootings became frequent, rival gangs were retaliating, and the streets of Durban were becoming more dangerous. The police had no choice but to take action. For years, law enforcement had been aware of Simone's operations, but they could never get close enough to bring her down. She was careful, never directly handling drugs, always using intermediaries. She paid off the right people and eliminated those who posed a threat. But as the body count rose, so did the pressure from the public and the media. In 2020, authorities launched a crackdown on organized crime in Durban, and Simone was at the top of their list. After months of surveillance and intelligence gathering, they finally made their move. In September 2020, she was arrested on multiple charges, including murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. It was the biggest blow to the cartel since its formation. For many, her arrest signaled the beginning of the end. The police had their Queenpin in custody, and it seemed like justice would finally be served. But Simone wasn't done yet. She had money, connections, and influence. And within weeks, she was out on bail. Her release sent a clear message: she was still in control. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Some of her closest allies were turning against her. Rivals saw an opportunity to strike, and the police weren't giving up. Simone had survived arrests before, but this time, the danger wasn't just from the law. The streets had changed, and soon, she would find out that not everyone wanted her to walk free. Simone Jasmin had always been one step ahead, outsmarting rivals, dodging the law, and maintaining her grip on Durban's drug trade. But by late 2020, the pressure was mounting. She had just been released on bail, and enemies were closing in. Some wanted revenge, others saw her as a liability. And then there were those who simply wanted her out of the picture, for good. On the evening of October 29th, 2020, Simone's luck finally ran out. She had arranged for an Uber to pick her up from a house in the Bluff, a quiet suburb south of Durban. As she approached the vehicle, she had no idea that it would be her final moments. Just as she got into the back seat, gunfire erupted. A group of gunmen, waiting in the shadows, unleashed a hail of bullets. The attack was swift and brutal. Simone never stood a chance. By the time the shooters disappeared into the night, her body was slumped inside the car, blood pooling beneath her. News of her assassination spread like wildfire. Some in the community mourned, while others breathed a sigh of relief. The Queen of the South was dead, and with her, an era of power, fear, and control came to an end. But her death left more questions than answers. Who ordered the hit? Was it a rival gang seeking revenge? An inside betrayal? Or did law enforcement have a hand in eliminating someone they couldn't convict in court? Officially, no arrests were made, and the case remains unsolved. But on the streets, one thing was clear. Simone Jasmin's reign had ended, and the battle for her empire had just begun. With Simone Jasmin dead, the cartel was left without its leader. Her empire, once built on fear and loyalty, began to crumble. Without her control, power struggles erupted, and rival gangs moved quickly to claim the territories she once ruled. What had once been a structured operation descended into chaos. Some of her closest associates went into hiding, fearing they would be the next targets. Others tried to maintain the business, but without Simone's leadership, things were never the same. The drug trade in Durban continued, but the cartel, as she had built it, was no more. In the streets of Wentworth and other areas she controlled, reactions to her death were mixed. Some saw her as a villain who had brought drugs and violence to their communities. Others remembered her as a woman who, despite her criminal empire, had also helped struggling families and looked out for those in need. The police called her assassination a gang-related hit, but to this day, no one has been arrested for her murder. Her death remains an open case, with many theories, but no definitive answers. Simone Jasmin's story is one of power, ambition, and violence. She broke barriers in a male-dominated world, rising to the top in a game where few women ever do. But in the end, her empire was built on a foundation of crime and bloodshed, one that could not last forever. Her rise and fall serve as a reminder that in the world of organized crime, no one stays untouchable. And no matter how powerful you become, the streets always find a way to take back what they gave. Thank you for watching. Kindly like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comment below. See you in our next video.